So I'm here representing Dr. Aaron Beck. So I'd like to thank NAMI Montgomery County because they awarded gave him the award Aftermark, which is a great pathway in. And Dr. Beck couldn't be here because he's not as mobile as he used to be, so he sends me as his emissary, so I'm here to represent him. But one of the things I want to tell you is that anything that I am saying, he would say only better. So we're definitely not... I also want to just indicate that everything I'm going to describe is psychology, but I think it's very consistent with the kind of stuff that Wade was just talking about. The biological and psychological levels are just different levels of description. So anything I say is not to say they're not opposing, it's just a different way of looking at things. So our work has actually evolved in the wake of the closing of Philadelphia State Hospital. Philadelphia's mental health system, especially the individuals that we've been working with, largely have been shaped by the fact that the state hospital was closed. But any of you who maybe know Philadelphia know we actually have a state hospital. It's called Norristown State Hospital. So we got rid of the state hospital, but we moved a lot of Philadelphians into Norristown State Hospital. So this is the network that individuals who are on the severest end of the continuum for severe mental illness find themselves within. And so these are the various places where I am currently working to help those individuals. And largely our work is about taking some of the stuff that Mark talked about and actually figuring out how the providers and the teams can actually produce the community integration, produce the participation. Because what I'm going to say is I actually have evidence that participation does improve symptoms, improves everything. You start with participation and you get everything. But I just wanted to give you a sense for where we're working. This is essentially, if somebody was chronically hospitalized in Norristown State Hospital, this would be the way they would step down into care until ultimately they were fully basically like anybody else in the community, as Mark said. And these are the various services that we'll talk about. So this is a sort of similar kind of thing, connection. Connection is a basic human need. And the one thing that we know about people with severe mental illness, especially the individuals who have been chronically hospitalized or rehospitalized, is that's something that they do not have. They are very socially isolated. It's really rather profound, actually. They don't have friends. They haven't had them for years. They never develop a close relationship, and they're just so isolated. This is really easy to see if you go any place where there's a milieu, like a hospital. You have all of these people together alone. Nobody's talking. One of the most amazing things about a state hospital is how you're there with all these people, and it's so quiet. So connection is a basic human need, and I tell you it's the curative. It is the answer to really helping these people get out of the position that they're in, because ultimately they no longer have access to motivation. I want to talk about that. I want to use it, but it's not that they don't have motivation, it's about access, and I'll tell you why I think that. So it's about helping them have access to motivation and ultimately reanimating something that has shut down in them long ago. This is just to illustrate. I'm going to go past this. Something that we discovered early on. We got involved in this work because we met with people like yourselves who are community providers, and we said, so what are the challenges that you have when you're trying to help somebody with severe mental illness and schizophrenia in particular? And again and again and again, what we came up with is negative symptoms, really the sort of the withdrawal, the lack of energy, the lack of expressivity, all that kind of stuff. So we then interviewed a lot of individuals who had the disorder, and we discovered something interesting, which is that, and this is why I say it's a psychological model, that there were particular beliefs that seem to really go with this sort of withdrawal. And we call them defeatist beliefs, and I have a couple of them here. And this seemed to be like right on top of. So if you are somebody who believes that there's no reason to try things because you're just going to fail, well, then why would you try? And the more you don't try, the more withdrawn, the more inactive you become. So, oops, I'm going to screw this up now. So this is just a diagram illustrating that we were able to show that these beliefs seem to really be a link between the performance on the cognitive tests and negative symptoms. What I don't have on here is we also measured functional outcomes, sort of the behavior in everyday life, and it's also a link to that. It's not about Philadelphia. It's not about me doing the test. There's a meta-analysis, which is basically a way of combining all of the tests, the different studies that have shown this effect. And so it's been shown all over the world. It's been shown in various phases of illness. So it seems to be a pretty standard thing that individuals with schizophrenia, they have defeatist beliefs, especially the ones who are withdrawn. The other thing we've been able to show in our research is that it shows up actually before anyone develops a disorder at all. So some of the stuff that Monica was talking about, you can show that individuals that are starting to show those residual symptoms also are starting to show the defeatist beliefs. Similarly, the most severe cases, so that if you can think of chronically institutionalized, people have the most severe negative symptoms, also show an elevation above everyone else in terms of these kinds of beliefs. This is kind of cool because this is a study by Eric Granholm in San Diego. And all I want you to see here, because it looks like roadkill, all I want you to see is that for tasks that are of moderate difficulty, individuals who have elevated defeatist beliefs put out less effort. So with the beliefs is really, it's sort of keeping them from trying. They don't try as much. And that's one of the reasons that they ultimately withdraw, because then they don't succeed. Okay. Another kind of belief, which I think might even be more fundamental, is asocial beliefs. And asocial beliefs are really about individuals just thinking that it's too much effort or it's not going to be worthwhile to do things with other people. So preferring to be alone than doing things with other people, not wanting to be around other people. We think of these beliefs really as kind of something that the individuals develop because social situations are really kind of tricky to navigate, and they haven't had a lot of success in them. So this protects them from further failure and that kind of thing. So it's one of the reasons they're going to stay isolated. So we were able to show in a study that these beliefs predicted future social functioning in the community, and that social functioning didn't predict the beliefs. So it's really the beliefs that are the guardian of the behavior, and that's key for the kind of stuff that we do. Oh my God, this is really looking awful. This is actually something somebody who used to work for me, who now a wonderful postdoc who works with Mark, put this whole thing together. And basically all this thing is showing is this is actually involvement in the community. That's what's over here. And all we're showing is that the defeatist beliefs I told you about and the asocial beliefs both contribute to it through motivation. The key thing is that those things really influence motivation. So the beliefs are on top of motivation. I think that's really key for everything else that we do. Okay. So now let's translate this into something that really matters on the ground. So recovery is what we should be doing. Recovery has sort of started as a political movement. It's become what you're supposed to do. But how do you do recovery with a guy who stares at the wall, whose speech you can't understand, and who doesn't want to talk to you? How do you do recovery with a woman who throws things at you and cusses at you when you as a team member come? So where we come in this business is to think about, well, how do you make recovery happen for people who are really stuck, for people who don't have access to the motivation, for people who have particular behaviors that they're manifesting to protect themselves in whatever way they're doing it. So that's what recovery-oriented cognitive therapy actually is a way of creating procedures that work for everybody. So sometimes I like to just sort of draw attention to the fact that these are the same things that Mark was saying earlier, the kinds of things that really help the people that recover, and probably you all know some people who recover completely. This is a sort of one of the things I think there should be more research on. There's a lot of people that recover completely, disappear back into the fold of life. But you know why you don't know about them. When you show up for an interview, you don't say, well, I used to believe that there was a chip in my head and the aliens were after me. You wouldn't do that. Or when you're out on a date, you say, you know, I used to think I was Jesus. So there's stigma. That's the stigma that's associated with it. So that's why we often don't know about these people, because when they really recover, it's stigmatized. And so something should change. Okay, so recovery-oriented cognitive therapy it's both an individualized treatment, but it's also a way of conducting a residential facility or a milieu. And I'll try to tell you about that a little bit. You can't really read that well. But essentially it starts with the point I'm telling you about. So you got this guy, he's staring at the wall, he doesn't want to meet with you. How do you actually connect with him? Because he's really disconnected and he's hard to connect with. So a lot of the procedure is, how do you connect up with somebody? And really the way that you connect with somebody is rather surprising and basic, which is things like music. Actually, the guy who stared at the wall, turned out he liked bird cages. And so rather than try to talk with him and say, hey, I got this bird cage, can you help me? All of a sudden, he comes to life. Hold on to that. We see that over and over again. Somebody who seems like they have significant withdrawal, there's really just impossible to interact with them. There is something, there's some activity that pulls them right out. You've probably seen this. We're just trying to systematize that. But once you've got that, once you've sort of got the connection to them, what do you do? What do you do next? And what we found is that what really excites people ultimately is to get what they want from life. They've somehow come off the path, as Monica was describing, and how do they get what they want? They still have the desires. I've never met anybody yet, and I've just 1,000 people or so have got this disorder from all different walks I've met. Nobody ever says, I don't have any desires. They might say they don't have goals, but that's only because goals have been commodified by the treatment providers. Say, well, do you want to know what I want, or do you want to know what my doctor wants? Okay, so that's what it is. But my favorite example of this is I met with a guy and he said, Doc, I'm 52 years old. Where's my wife? Where's my house? Where's my car? Where's my job? Everybody's got it. And so the question is how to tap into that and then to make it real. And so that's why I was saying to Mark, it's through the participation that you get everything else out of that. Now, it may very well turn out as you sort of help somebody start to move towards, let's say that they want to be a carpenter again, whatever that is. As they move towards it, that's when their voices get in the way, or that's when the lack of energy gets in the way. And then that's when we address them the way you would traditionally and psychiatrically. But for some people, it's what he said. For some people, they just keep on going. It's just fine. So some people, participation and real recovery behavior is a curative. We did a randomized clinical trial of this approach. All I want to do is just to show you that we can show that it worked in a randomized trial, so we were able to randomize people to this treatment. It improved their functional outcomes. It improved their negative symptoms, especially motivation, so access to motivation, as I was saying. And then to our surprise, it actually improved the positive symptoms. We have a follow-up that we just did. So these gains are maintained when the therapy is withdrawn, so we take that to mean they learned something. And they changed their perspective, and it continues to work. It's not that it was just that we had really fantastic therapists. It was actually something powerful. One of the cool things we discovered, though, and this again is something you can't see, but the long story short here, what this is showing you is that individuals with a really chronic course, that's 40 years of illness, so you know how old the individual is, they do get better. They're just slower. So one of our things is that everybody can recover, but some people, they're just it's going to take longer. And one of the things we've actually seen is with more intensive treatment, like an ACT team can provide, you can speed that curve up. So for the younger people, they got better a lot faster within 6 months. But the people with a chronic course, as you can see, starts to come up after about a year. So don't give up. That's the message there. So this is sort of what we discovered from that, which is that as you help somebody do more, they have access to more motivation. And interestingly enough, they have less time for their voices. They have less time to be God, all those kinds of things. So essentially, as they get more tangible, real stuff in life, there's less time for the stuff that isn't so much, that isn't actually in life. And it's amazing how somebody who thinks they own the hospital, they own the state, they own you, well, all that stuff goes away when they're able to work at the SPC, with pets and things like that. It's incredible. Grandiose beliefs don't need grandiose results to have somebody feel like they're a connected human being. How much time do I have left?
8 minutes.
Huh?
8 minutes.
Okay. Am I talking too fast? I probably am. This is a nice study we've done. Basically, the long story short is that the essence of this treatment, and I think the essence of recovery for a lot of the people, is experiencing success. And so we conducted a study where we just focused on giving a success experience. And what it does, and this is my pivot point, what it does is it helps the individual, they have negative beliefs about themselves, those become a little bit less strong. But really importantly, the positive beliefs that they carry out about themselves become stronger. And we think that what really is promoting recovery is the development of these positive beliefs. The person has more and more access to that, believes it more. I can succeed, I can be connected, all that kind of stuff. That's the key. And that's my pivot point. So that's Benjamin Rush. Do you guys know who he is? I'm sure you do. Yeah. He shows up everywhere. He's the founder of American Psychiatry. Well, if you go back and read his original book, I didn't read all of it, but I read some of it. He has some of the things that we see now. He observed, for example, if somebody was really good at poetry was a great way to work with them. Somehow he got caught up in bloodletting and all that kind of stuff. But he had some of the same observations. This is 200 years ago. This is 200 years ago right here in Philadelphia. 100 years ago, you can find similar kinds of things in Carl Jung's writing from Switzerland. Similar kind of thing about the things you do with people, all of a sudden having them jump out of whatever. They're less disorganized, they've got more energy, all that kind of stuff. And even this cool paper from the heart of the swinging 60s, when everything was really behavioral, this is a neat study, if you haven't heard of it, where they show that just by changing the environment of the unit, all of a sudden you see no disorganized behavior, you see no disorganized speech, just by switching it from a hospital unit to a unit that's focused on, say, they had one that was focused on parties, they had one that was focused on vocation. It didn't matter, just not focused on being a patient. So that leads me to this. So one of the things that we have observed is in just a very specific interaction, someone can go from what we think of as a patient mode. What does it mean to be a patient? You're broken. There's something wrong with you. You're not able to do what other people can do. To a more adaptive mode. And that's what we're talking about in terms of the crux of what we're doing is the good stuff is within the person. So we've been working with people who literally are smearing feces and barricading themselves. And then all of a sudden you ask them about, I really need help with the recipe. I'm really terrible at cooking, that kind of thing. Could you help me? All of a sudden, there's the woman that was 50 years ago was doing all this stuff. So we think this is a real key thing, and thinking about people in the adaptive mode and really trying to elicit that and really help staffs and ACT teams, et cetera, do that. So these are some of the things that we've done, that we like running clubs, crochet clubs, gardens are really good. It's amazing. People call this therapy, but it's amazing how much sort of taking care of it. But again, here's what I want to say to you, and I think this is the key to all of this. These are people, for the large part, who've been deprived of human connection. The best way to connect with other people and not feel like a patient is to help them. And so we actually try to help providers see that the best way you can help your patient is to let them help you. Isn't that the golden rule, something like that? So that's really the crux of what we do. And so we work in residential facilities. These are just some of the ones, but ultimately you can think of them all as the same. And what we realized is that you can, it seems like it's artificial, but it's not really actually the shifts. You can use them to promote recovery, because each shift can map onto life and the life that you want to have. So you've got, basically, I'll just show you. So like in the morning shift, here's one of the things that somebody from one of the agencies in Philadelphia told me. They said, nobody has anything for how do you help somebody who's got severe negative symptoms get up? How do you help them actually get out of bed? So that'd be pretty cool, because if you can get out of bed, the world is your oyster. But if you can't, you got nothing, right? So a lot of what the morning shift about is helping the staff figure out how to help the individuals get up. And I remember when I was first challenged with this, I thought, well, why do I get up? There's got to be something to get up for. And I promise you, it's not vitals and medication. That's not anything that anyone in this room would get up for. And so that's what I want to say. So part of it is about getting up and then really doing all the work of the day, getting involved in the work that matters to you, the meaningful stuff that Mark was talking about. That's when you can do a lot of that stuff and do it with other people. The evening shift, I think all of you, when you go home after work, you don't just go home and sit, right? You go home and you have various activities you do. What a great time to have all these different clubs where you can do stuff together, which is what you do in the community too. Because one of the things that if you've looked at some of the literature on recovery is, the saddest thing is that a lot of people, when they go out of a state hospital into the community, they're as inactive in the community as in the state hospital. This is getting them, getting their appetite up, getting them ready. When they go out, they're gonna want to do stuff like this to have even more to do. And then, of course, the overnight shift, we all face this too, right? It's really about how do you get back to sleep and sleep through the night so that you have all the energy. I would tell you some of the worst behavior I've seen in the various places I work is because the individuals aren't able to sleep. And I think that would be true of all of us. So the weekend shift, right, that's where you get to really pursue some of your really crazy hobbies, like if you want to go fishing, I've got here basketball games, things like that. So the weekend is really about pursuing the stuff that's really the fun stuff that you care about. This is just some things I like to share, is that there are ways to show that this treatment works. This is a day room, as you can see, and we use naturalistic observation to see how active is that day room, to see if it's working. Because after all, when you start, typically, what do you have in here? We call them the sleeping sisters or the sleeping brothers. They're just all sitting in there. And over time, they start to do stuff together, and it's really active. Similarly, you can look at this as another way of looking at it, is how often are people out of their rooms? And this is just a chart showing that they're out of the rooms more, so you can see that the thing is working. We also work with ACT teams. And ACT is kind of a cool model, and I think what's often happened with ACT teams is that they focus mostly on case management, but any case management that you're doing, if you do it in a clinical way, it helps the person learn something, that they have more efficacy, that they're able to do things that you wouldn't expect them to do, and several of the examples I gave you were ACT teams. So for example, the woman that won't let you in, ultimately, when you find out that she knows about soap operas, and then rather than say, because the worst thing you can do, actually, is if you knock on the door and say, how are you doing? Now, think about somebody who's really upset about things. Well, let me tell you, I'm so, but instead you come in, I didn't catch the Young and Restless, could you help me? Oh, you're no good. And then you have the conversation, and then ultimately find out that she can help you. So basically using those kinds of hooks. So ACT teams, and the cool thing with ACT teams is that ACT teams always have a problem that they have a certain percentage of the people on their team who do not want to engage the service. They don't have an illness, they don't want the ACT team, all that kind of stuff. So with what we're talking about, they can engage those people. So this is a way of showing that they can get, in fee for service, here's an example of this. The people that weren't engaging the service start engaging it a lot more because they have to get what's called units. And so it's a really cool way, again, to see it's working. You're reaching the people who are rejecting you. What could be better than that? Bringing recovery to the people who say, get out of my face, I don't want to let you in my door. And then, before you know it, they're doing all kinds of amazing volunteering. This is just some outcome data. We originally conducted a lot of this work in Georgia, and this is some work we did in Georgia. And the reason I like to show this slide is that we conducted all over the state of Georgia has an Olmstead problem in the sense that they warehoused a lot of people. So we did this training in the state hospitals on the ACT teams for individual therapists. We did not select the therapist. These were just the therapists were there, so typical therapists. They all selected their hardest cases. So typical therapist, hardest case, what I want to tell you is 2/3 of the people achieved significant recovery in one of their dimensions within 6 months. These are people who maybe didn't really improve much over the course of 20, 30, in some cases it was 40 years of being about the same. So we think there's lots that can be done. This is possible only because of the lack of good things that these people were getting and opportunities that they were getting. So am I out of time?
No. 2 minutes.
Okay. So I'll just continue this train ride. So one of the cool things we've been thinking about, and this is sort of, I wanted to link it up because this was about the brain, is that, there's a fair amount of research that individuals with schizophrenia show a reduction in the brain volume over the course of time. There's been some recent evidence that maybe the brain reorganizes, but we think that some of the stuff we're talking about might really promote that, and you might actually be able to see ultimately that there's a change in the brain. But I would follow Mark in saying it's through the participation in activity to that change. And so that's kind of what we would think would be a cool thing to think about, because I actually think this phenomena, which you can read about in Benjamin Rush, and we observe, the person who goes from being so disengaged to really that person has not been studied at all. How does that happen? How does that work? What does that look like? What makes it happen? Similarly, this hits what Monica was talking about. I'm involved in a project with the GUR group where they're teaching people who are high risk basically acting skills. But if you've heard what I've said this whole time, my thinking about this is it's less about the acting skills and completely about the connection with the other people and that camaraderie. And in fact, I have here something that one of the guys said when I went to one of the classes afterward and they were debriefing with Monica. They said, people got your back. Right? The idea is that if you can trust other people and you feel connected with them, and I think if you think back in your own life, maybe when you were younger, you might have had, and you might still be young, I don't mean that badly, you might think of a really significant experience you had with other people that really stands out. And sometimes it is putting on a play, sometimes it is being on a sports team. That's something that you carry with you. And that's something that a lot of the individuals who develop schizophrenia don't have. And this is a beautiful opportunity to give them that, help them have that, and then build on it. I remember the last one I went to, I proposed to them, I said, look, you guys put on this play. Did you think you could do it ahead of time? And they said, no. What do you think it means you could do? What other things do you think you can't do that you could do? And that is a launching pad for a young person. Maybe a little more controversial, I think another next step is I think there's becoming more and more evidence that a lot of people can go off the medications who have schizophrenia. And the question is, who are they and how can they do it? I know I saw some faces, but it is system. And I think there's a lot of evidence that for a lot of people, the medications have a lot of bad effects on your body. So as Mark was saying, wellness is one of the big things you need to have. If the medicine is not allowing you to be completely well, then maybe we need to use it more strategically. And I'll leave it there. Thank you. I feel like it was a pie fight.